and welcome to the first video in our ad sales management series. I'm Jill Dignan, Chief Growth Officer here at V2 Strategic Advisors, and I'm sitting down today with John Donnelly, the Chief Revenue Officer for Inc. & Fast Company. John, tell us a little bit about your history with the company and your role.
Well, hi, Jill. Thank you for letting me join today. I've been at Inc. & Fast Company for about 8 years now. And I'm serving, as you mentioned, as Chief Revenue Officer. I'm in charge of all sales and marketing. And my job is to grow revenues.
Great. And I know there's been a ton of change. You talk about industry evolving and certainly in the past couple of years with COVID. How have things changed for you in the business?
Jill, it's more a question of what hasn't changed. You know, the industry is in a perpetual state of change right now. And when you think about all the things impacting us, from the death of the cookie, first party data, ad blockers, hackers, invalid traffic, tech titans changing their algorithms, hackers, like I mentioned them, security and privacy issues, paywalls, programmatic marketplace, Bitcoin, and of course, there's the COVID-19. So you name it, things have been evolving really rapidly, and it absolutely affects our business in a significant way.
And how has Mansueto been able to sort of weather the storm, so to speak? What role has technology played? What role have you played in sort of navigating throughout this period?
So as everything's been changing on a monthly basis, you know, we've had to pivot. And so one example, a great example, is our live event business, which I happen to have our passes behind me right here. The live event business we pivoted to virtual. And we're one of the few businesses that we did it very successfully because we decided early on, when COVID hit and everything locked down in March of 2020, we decided we were going to go all in on virtual. And we did hundreds of webinars and took our pillar signature events and went virtual with them.
Absolutely. And I know we have a ton of customers who were looking to try to make that same transition over the last year and going from sort of live events and, even challenges on the print and digital space and trying to figure out how to move to a more virtual model and a more heavy subscriber and membership model. What were some of the challenges that you guys faced in trying to get up and running with virtual events?
Well, the most obvious thing was that, one of the things that impacted us significantly was our pillar events generated significant dollars in gate revenue. With virtual, people just weren't willing to pay that. So one of the things we had to adapt was the fact that, we were going to be more sponsorship reliant than normal because of the lack of gate. And then from a technology platform perspective, we had to figure out how to merge quite a few different platforms to optimize them to be able to do what we wanted to do.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys were definitely at the forefront and kind of reaching a place that a lot of publishers and media organizations were trying to go. Curious how that's going to shape things moving forward for you now that we're kind of coming out of some of the pandemic, getting back to more in person. What role is virtual going to play for you guys moving forward?
Well, the term we've been using internally is hybrid. So we definitely have plans to go live, starting with South by Southwest, our two events that we have there in March. But we're using the term hybrid because what we've learned with our virtual streaming of all of these sessions is that there's still huge demand for that. So we don't want to lose that. So we're going to capitalize that actually to ascertain higher audiences than before and continue to leverage something that's worked out really well for both brands.
That's great to hear. And I know we have a lot of customer stories of kind of moving towards this more audience-based, leveraging audience data, supplementing and being able to pull in kind of third-party marketplace data to supplement audience information, and then kind of that full circle back to how you're engaging with advertisers on the ad sales side. So would love to talk a little bit about where you guys are at with your ad sales platforms and the underlying technology, because I know there's been a ton of work that's been done to get you where you are today. So would you just tell us a little bit about where you guys are at with ad sales technology?
Yeah, well, interesting, because we're a boutique brand, in terms of the revenues coming in right now, we're predominantly direct. So programmatic is not a meaningful percentage of our revenue. So that places extra burden on our technology to get this right. So we really need to be able to go to the marketplace with enough volume behind our C-suite audiences to gain traction, to continue to maintain the revenue that we've achieved this year.
So one thing that I would love to dig into is kind of the role that that your technology's played and how your media and ad sales business and technology has evolved over the last 3 years. So we talked a little bit about the more recent transition from live events to more virtual events and focus on audiences and all of that programmatic, maybe not as much of a goal in the next few years, but how have you guys been evolving and what are your goals going forward?
So one of the biggest goals that we have for our organization is to grow scale. And the reason we want to do that is not specifically to be able to play in the programmatic space, but just because we want to continue to be able to deliver and optimize buys for clients in a meaningful way. I mean, we grew so much this year that we got pretty darn close to being sold out. And that's not a position that a boutique publisher wants to be in. So for us, it's materially important to leverage all the technology that's out there to enable us to grow our audience. We've got quite a bit of knowledge in terms of, Inc. has a contributor network, and, we've been optimizing and evaluating every single post that goes up on the site to try to maximize it. We leverage social media as necessary. And even the look and feel of the sites, we spend a lot of time evaluating all that. So, as we continue to target growth for going forward, we know that we need to be bigger overall to enable us to continue to leverage the money that currently is coming in the door at a pretty swift rate at the moment.
And what role do you believe that technology plays in supporting that growth? And do you feel like you're at a point now where your technology can keep up?
So, there's several ways you can use technology, and we haven't really talked about, one of the things that I use in my role is I'm a huge fan of our CRM system. So, I use that religiously daily to enable me to keep my eye on where all the revenues are. And that absolutely gives me an edge because, we can cover it in a little bit, but I've got a lot of information that I know a lot of other people don't have at my fingertip.
And I love hearing about how you guys are using CRM and Salesforce. And I know when we talk to a lot of other leaders and executives in the media space, CRM is sometimes not the first solution that comes to mind when thinking about kind of that 30,000 foot view of the business and where executives are spending their time, right? We think of CRM as sort of being the traditional leads, accounts, contacts, opportunities, but really, it's become much more of a platform and also that place to derive analytics with a lot of the ways that CRM technology has evolved, and certainly Salesforce over the last decade. So would love to hear a little bit more about how you're using CRM and analytics and maximizing your technology investment to drive revenue.
So Jill, we had a leadership meeting in August in our offices. And I went to the meeting prepared with an executive meeting dashboard that I created in Einstein that enabled me to show the last 6 years, because we started our Salesforce system about 6 years ago. So it enabled me to show them trends from the past 6 years. So we could look at every media element. We could look at, trends in terms of, whether it was growing, whether it wasn't growing, and you could see where the money, where it's going. So it enabled us to have a much better conversation with the editors about, hey, here's where the business is, and then here's where we think it's going. And for us, no surprise, our web offerings are now contributing over 60% of our revenues for the company, and we expect those to continue to grow. But to be able to use dashboards, which, by the way, instantly change. You just touch the dashboard and it just reconfigures and shows you, for us, we have 4 different main media elements. So I could tap one of them and show you what's going on with print. I could tap what's going on with digital, what's going on with events. And so, using the information like that is really helpful. And I can tell you that we have a very sophisticated pipeline management program. We call it the 3X pipeline, but we have the sales team putting in all of their estimates, and then whatever you're short of goal, you're required to have 3X those revenues in your pipeline to have any shot. When we put this system in place in Salesforce in March, we tripled the number of proposals that the company sent out in the marketplace. And I'm just going to tell you, with an average closing percentage, of over 33%, nothing but good things is going to happen when we did that. So, we're up significantly. I mentioned that this year, and I think this was a big part of it. I'm able to measure RFP velocity. I have closing rates by every single salesperson by title. I've got revenue by media element. I've got historical booked and pending numbers for the past 6 years. I can compare by week where we were in 2018, which was a really good year, so that I can tell you at any point in time where we are versus where we were previously. And knowledge is power. When it comes to actually being in charge of a business like this, you have to have all this kind of information at your fingertips.
Yeah, and I know there's many executives that are maybe listening and are wondering how you can get to that kind of end state with analytics, especially on some of the front end stuff that you talked about in terms of the data that sellers are entering, kind of the upfront estimates and forecasting. That's an area where we typically hear there's a lot of challenge where, especially in media, the forecast really is starting when an order is getting entered. So there's a lot of curiosity that others in media have about how do we actually get sellers putting in estimates more upfront, entering RFP data, doing better account-based forecasting, kind of pre-order. So any kind of words of wisdom or any insights you can share in terms of how you've been able to really not just take advantage of a technology solution in terms of the analytics offerings and build that out, but all of the work up front to kind of get the organization thinking about the importance of data capture, data entry, and making sure that it's adopted. How has that journey been, and any advice to offer?
Well, I've got plenty of advice on this topic, and it's one of my most favorite subjects. I'll tell you that the first thing that we did when we were implementing Salesforce was we picked the right systems integrator. And by the way, that happened to be me too. So, I met with John Tanner, and what we talked about was keeping it simple. So when I joined, it was Mansueto Ventures in 2014, I had a system fully functional in about 8 months. And the reason is because we kept the system simple. And really, John Tanner was absolutely crucial in setting it up in a way that we knew that we were going to put the salespeople's priority first, because understanding that if they get value out of the system, they're going to use it. The trick is, in our business, you got to get your estimates right. And the system that was built took splits into account perfectly. And so that meant that I could get reports that would report revenue by salesperson, no matter where they were geographically, that are accurate. And by the way, to the penny, because we actually go in for the digital stuff afterwards and correct it. So on a month by month basis. So we're about a month behind on the actuals. But when a seller sells something, they put it through in their estimate first, and it's not hard. It's really simple. So with that, contacts and meeting summaries, that was the original kind of build out that we did. And then when I took on Fast Company in 2018, we added them. And at that same time, John Tanner kind of told me, JD, you're one of the most loving guys that I've ever met. You're going to love this analytics thing. You should give it a try. And so we built it. And then, at first I was a little skeptical, but then what I saw, what we could do, it was absolutely amazing. And that's why, we've actually taken it multi-steps up, and it wasn't that hard, to be honest. So that, when I talk about RFP velocity and 3X pipeline things, we're putting everything into Salesforce now, and it's not taking up too much time for the salespeople. It's actually enabling them to be strategic about their business as well. So they know where they stand, they know what they have to do. And then we know, on an effectiveness basis, what type of closing rate we have on the proposals that we're creating for our team. So operating efficiently and effectively, honestly, I can't see operating a business like this without an outstanding system. I don't know how anybody can do it.
Tell us about, top trends that you're seeing on the horizon for the ad sales industry.
I think number one, first and foremost, it's diversifying your revenue streams. That's not optional. So you can't be solely reliant on ad revenue. You also have to get consumer revenue as well. Then in terms of, adaptability and flexibility are absolutely key. When live events get swept out from under you because of something like COVID, South by Southwest was canceled. Our big pillar events, we had contracts with JW Marriott on the Inc. side. You have to be able to quickly change and adapt. And then lastly, here, the third trend for publishing is that print is going to continue to need to be used strategically. It's been in decline. It's a secular decline, but we've been leveraging it strategically, and we've been able to, we call it a 4-cylinder engine, but we've got 4 different revenue streams that are being optimized for every kind of print issue that comes out with a big act in it.
Well, John, thanks so much for joining us again. And for those listening, be sure to check out the next video in our series to learn more. And be sure to contact V2 with any questions or comments going back to your ad sales organization.